Okay, we are live, sir.
Hi everyone, welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. And if you are new to this, we always ask while everyone is joining in and we're getting ready to go, if you could put where you're watching from, and Joe will do the shout outs as we get started.
Ah! Start shouting random stuff into the microphone. I'm not says hello from the most Swedish country in the world. I'm guessing it's Sweden. Sindrunk says hello from California, USA. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to read this name. It's Gogo Lumos LPA. Says hi from Switzerland. Glad to be here. Man, that's a tough name to read. Yari says hi from Finland. Toby Fox says hi from the UK. Looking forward to getting a hold of drawing hands. Mustafa says hello from Iraq. Stella says hey people. Chris Wong says hello from Ohio. Andrew Bikini says hello from Pennsylvania. Fabian says hello from the Netherlands. Ice Dragon 064 says hi from Alberta, Canada. Finishing up my night right now. Amen says hello from Saudi Arabia. Amen also says hello from Saudi. Oh, I already read that one. That's one. Clarissa says hello from Austria. I was beginning to think I wouldn't make it in time, yet here I am. Woo! Looking forward to another stream. Divine Kedaroshi says hello from Poland. Kathy Brown says hello from Texas. Danielle Peterson says good morning from Australia. And Valerie says hello from Switzerland. Man, a lot of Switzerland people today. Oh, J Mill says hi from Night. Wait, Night what? Peppermint Night. Torrin Vincent says howdy peep. Renato says hello from Italy. And okay. You do your thing. Unless you're not done yet.
Nope, I'm done. Okay, officially, hi everyone. Welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. I'm Tim von Rueden, joined with Joe Chico.
Hi.
And today we're going to be showing how to draw hands. This is something that I feel like artists tend to avoid drawing at all costs. You'll see them in pockets, behind the back, in a shadow, behind armor, or behind a weapon, whatever it might be. I always see hands being hidden. And I think it's a good habit to not only be able to draw them comfortably, but have them add to the overall character concept. So like you can put the hand in a specific pose or the way that you draw them in a way that kind of enhances the overall character's personality. So we're going to go through some methods on how I like to draw hands and how to become more comfortable working with hands and try to making it less like methodical and less like blocky and have it be more fluid. So that's what we're going to be covering. But before we start, I just want to really quick tell you guys that we have the contest that has been going on for about a month now, and it ends tomorrow. So if you want to enter that contest, check on our community site. It's community.cgcookie.com, and it's a peppermint night. There have been a lot of entries, and there has been a lot of really cool ones. So there's also a community award. So if you want to vote for your favorites so that they win, you should go and do that before tomorrow. One of the reasons we're doing this hand tutorial or live stream is because there is a hand exercise that I put out on Monday, and I'll put the results next Friday. But the idea is there's 9 hand gestures, and it is asking you to draw those 9 hand gestures. It's up to you whether you want them to be sketches or colored. But this live stream will be more on sketching, and then next week I'll go through how to color a hand. So that'll be kind of fun. The question that I want to ask you guys, and if you're new to the live stream, we try to have a question every week for you guys. And the one that I wanted to ask you is specific with hands, and what do you struggle most with drawing hands? And it tends to vary. It can even be something as simple as like, my wrinkles always look wrong, or I don't know how to draw the nail. And I'm just curious what you guys want to see so that I for sure cover it in the live stream. Okay, And I think that's all the things that have happened since last week. Oh, for last week's live stream, we did the traditional drawing, and I finished it. I don't know where I put it. It's right here. But I finished it with this new lamp that I got. I went out to get a Pixar lamp, the ones with a light bulb, but I found one that had a magnifying glass on it. So I've been kind of going psycho on rendering my traditional drawings really close. I put my head right on, see this air vent? I put it right here, and I get really close to my drawings. So that's happened since last week. And I got my head casted over the weekend. So now I have a little baby Tim that I can be, it's ready to have some facial sculptures ready to go, because I think I want to make some prosthetics for this year's Halloween. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I already have my Photoshop document open. So I'm going to switch the screen here. And if this is your first time here, feel free to ask any questions, even if they don't pertain specifically to drawing hands. It could be anything about digital art, getting a job as a freelancer, whatever it might be. So feel free to ask. All right, switching over. All right, so these were the hands that I've been doing this morning and a little last night. It was for the promo image. So I'm actually going to put those on the side. But I'm going to go through a very similar technique with those. Let's see. What hand gesture should we do first? Let's do the peace sign. I think that's a good standard one to start with. But I'll do it on the other side here. Okay, and for this whole live stream, I'm going to be using a chalk brush. And it's basically this brush. It just has a bit of texture on it. Oops. And the eraser will be the chalk brush as well. So whenever I need to erase or make like a more definitive line, I'll use the eraser as the same brush, because if it was just a circle brush, it probably would interfere with the look of the texture, and I want to keep that consistent while I'm drawing. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw this peace sign here. I took a little photo of my hand yesterday, so I'm going to use that as my reference. And I beg you guys to use reference when drawing hands. I think, yeah, it is cool if you're able to draw hands without reference, but you'll always be helping yourself if you have a reference right there that you can work off of. You don't have to do like a 1-to-1 realistic ratio render, but it always helps just to see the forms, or like where the wrinkles lie and how the skin molds around the different anatomical parts underneath the skin. So I always try to work with reference when I'm working with hands. Now, I'm sure when you guys, if you've gone to art school before, you might have been taught to draw hands as like a block. And then the four fingers would be these sort of divisions here, and then the thumb would go somewhere out here. Now, I don't really like the block method that much. If anything, if you do use something that is more blocky, I would recommend you use more like a pentagon. And then these would be the four sections for the fingers, but then this gives more leeway for the thumb. And I've always just found the pentagon to be more realistic for a hand than a square. So it's something to kind of keep in mind if that's how you do it. But in the case of drawing hands, we are going to do a peace sign that is facing the other way. So the nail part is going to be facing you down here, and the thumb will be over. I would just pull the reference over, but I look didn't realize I captured my face in it, and I look really dumb. I look like unimpressed with life right now. So it's going to be something like this. But the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to look at the forms that we're creating, and I'm just going to go slowly, and I'm going to let it be more fluid. And this is, I want you guys to at least experiment with this method, because this is something that I tried in college, and I was really hesitant to do it. I was always very like slow, and I would be like, I have to capture the forms perfectly on the first pass like this. But instead, I want it to be more fluid. So let's go ahead and get started. If you guys have any questions, I guess while I'm doing the foundation, let's take a couple.
Oh, we have tons. This one has +10. Is there a way you could turn on your speakers so that I'm not getting an echo, or headphones or something?
Yes. Hold on.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know why that's so bizarre that it hadn't done it at all until like the last couple of weeks.
That is
where
bizarre.
the echo started kicking in. All right. Tigil says, "Hello guys, this tutorial is going to be so handy. Great that you are giving us a hand with this. I'm sure the puns won't get out of hand. You are handling this perfect. Thumbs up. By the way, you guys look so handsome today. Greetings from Digital." Thank you very much. Now that we've gotten all the hand puns that you could possibly use out of the way.
Expected.
Yeah, we have a ton of what people are struggling with apparently.
I would love to hear.
A lot of people are saying foreshortening is something that people are kind of struggling with, as far as like things or hands coming at you and fingers and stuff. Eve East, or sorry, I'm not supposed to say E. Eve says what I struggle with the most with hands is drawing them in perspective, like from the very side or foreshortened. Digital says, I struggle the most with making the proportions for the hand. The space between the knuckles and the middle of the finger is always off, and the hands seem to bend in places where it shouldn't bend. That's the struggle I have too. Chico says, my biggest struggle with drawing hands is drawing hands.
That's pretty good.
Nicole also says, hand foreshortening is tricky. Eamon also says, I struggle most with hand proportions, especially in action poses. Somehow the hand looks too big or too small. Any advice?
That's a good one. You can definitely tell when a hand looks too small or too big in a picture. The way I always look at it is if you can actually tell if it's too big or small. With digital art, you can kind of get away with just using like a liquify filter and making it smaller. Like in this case, I think my palm is too small. Now, personally, I feel more comfortable doing hands and things that are so like minuscule like this on pencil and paper. But with digital, we kind of have that luxury of being able to bend and push the proportions if they feel a little inaccurate. So here, I just used the liquify filter and I made it a little bigger. But if you notice it in your own piece, try to be aware while you're working on it, why are you making it bigger or smaller than it is intended to be? And a lot of the times it's because you're trying to make the hand fit with like a flow of the character. And if they're too small, I would just literally use your selection tool or your lasso selection tool and cut it out and make it bigger. If they're too big, I would do the same thing, but smaller. But I would always have another pair of eyes look at it if you really aren't sure if it looks too big or small. Or just take a reference photo of yourself in that action pose. And sometimes with foreshortening, this is where you can really get some hands that are either too big or too small looking, but sometimes it actually might be more accurate than you might think. So don't just throw it under the bus as inaccurate if you don't have a reference that you're working off of. But especially if you are doing an action pose, I would definitely recommend that.
The other thing you can do is for proportions, there's always a measurement. I know the resource has the measurements for the actual hand. For if you're doing it with a character, what you can do is take your hand right now and then put it on your face. And you should see that if the character's hand is like not even covering over his eyes, like his fingers aren't covering his eyes, then that hand is way too small. And if the hand like covers the entire head, then you know the hand is too big. There's a general proportion for that where it's like my hand's a little my hand's a little small, so it's like I can barely like my fingers cover my eyebrows and like touch my forehead. What about yours, Tim?
Mine covers my whole face.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
Bony fingers.
Oh, Jamil says, I finally got my Apple Pencil, and it's my first time drawing with the pressure-sensitive stylus. It's amazing. I've always used the mouse or mesh tip. Have you ever drawn without pressure-sensitive stylus?
Oh my gosh. With my Cintiq, I was doing it a little bit without any opacity on it, so it was kind of interesting. But no, I've never done like a full-out mouse drawing before. I mean, I'm really glad to hear you got a. I actually don't know what an Apple Pencil is. Is that the new one?
The Apple Pencil is supposed to be like the thing that overthrows Wacom or something like that. It's just a really sensitive pressure pencil that works for the iPad Pro, I think, or the biggest iPad. I want to know how that is because people have been saying it's really good, but I haven't actually seen it live. So let us know.
I'm going to copy this onto a new layer, and this is where I'm going to get a little more into the detailing. So I got my outer shape, and it might not be perfect right now, and I might actually throw in the reference photo just to see, but I really do recommend not drawing over a reference photo. I think that kind of hurts the whole idea of trying to figure out proportion on your own and having the visual cues to see from the reference to your own drawing what is in place and what is off. So even though I can tell there might be a few things a little off, I'm at the point where I can start getting into really trying to define the shapes. Now, when drawing the hand, when I'm doing the palm, I have to be I actually wish I did one that was topside first, just because I think the area on the top is so important in terms of like these knuckles, and you can kind of render those out and it gives a lot more life to them. But when you're working with the palm, you have to think of the way that the hand is wrinkling and making sure that those wrinkles make sense with how the hand is formed. So in this case, with our peace sign, we're going to get a really heavy wrinkle right here because the hand itself, this thumb, which normally is out here, is getting pulled over. And when it's doing that, the skin here is getting squished into itself. So we're going to get a pretty heavy wrinkle right here and all down that thumb part of the palm. And when I do this, I try to include some subtle shadows just to kind of indicate and imply form. And this way, when I keep moving through, it helps me see the form, and it comes to life a lot easier when I go along the way and just add some simple hash marks for the shadow areas. And then at the base of the palm into the wrist area, depending on the age of the person, whether they're male or female, or depending on how thick or thin they are, you want to at least include some kind of a subtle indication of the vein and the bone that is right under that palm there. So usually just like a simple shadow like this will do. And in this case, when I took the reference photo, I actually twisted my arm. So this bone is actually twisting around the arm, and I can indicate that with just the shadow line here.
Kaz Kilroy asks, my knuckles look too protruded whenever I draw bent fingers. Anyway, I could tone them down without fading them out completely.
Yes, I think when we do the foreshortening one, my knuckles being like really show you how to make it look accurate while the pop out are the ones that are right on the base of so if it was on the other side, it would be these four part of the knuckles. But usually when people think knuckles, they only think of the two on the fingers. But when I see like opportunity with the base knuckles to really popping unrealistic. All right, so now this wrinkle that is underneath there, it would also be, and this creates a sense of cohesion. because then you know that this wrinkle is accurate. Just it's being sure that if a wrinkle does pass all the way down, that it would seem to connect on both ends.
Apparently your mic is cutting out and you're getting all robot-y.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gotta get those wires. Is there any way you could explain how to attach the wrist to the hand?
Yeah. Okay. So on the back side, man, I really should have done a front hand first. I think the front of the hand is a lot easier than the back of the hand. There's a few more things that you have to kind of consider. And in this case, let's see here. When I look at my reference, there's definitely like a clear shadow that defines like the bottom of the wrist here and where it connects, or the top of the wrist, I should say, to the hand. And I'm going to separate the two without it feeling like line art. So let me try to do it with just a shadow here. But depending on how the hand is being pushed and pulled, it's going to be connected to the wrist. And in this way, since I have my arm bent a little bit, the hand is going to do sort of like a bent motion into the wrist. So then this part of the wrist will be lower than this part. So in this case, let me see if I have, yeah, and then on the top side, since it is generally more flat, depending on how the hand is positioned, it just kind of connects in a very fluid way. Like usually the edge, you can have more fun with like the wrist bones and how those kind of push out. But on the back of the hand, you do have to be a little more aware of the shadows because the palm itself is typically thicker than your wrist, depending on how thick of a wrist you have. But in my case, I have a really, really thin wrist. So the palm definitely extrudes quite a bit and it's creating that heavy shadow underneath. So when I'm connecting it to the wrist, I'm just more focusing on the shadows that are apparent and I'm making sure I render those out.
Toby Fox says, the thing I struggle with most is the placement of the thumb.
Yes. That is something that maybe for the foreshortening one, I'll have my thumb kind of like out in the open like this one over here. But typically it comes down to that idea that I was talking before of don't use the box theory. And if anything, the other thing that I really don't like the box as your base for your hand is that when you do the fingers, it's giving the impression that they all start on the same line. But when I was taught to draw the hand, it's more of like an angle. It's like a curved top angle. And then if you still want to do those divisions, even still in a natural state, your hand, it won't just be the fingers are straight up. Typically, the hand is slightly more curved. So the fingers would be like this. And then instead of the square box, think of it as that pentagon like we were talking earlier. And then have your thumb come out of the tip of the pentagon here. This is usually how I kind of the hand.
You're probably gonna have to say what you just said again because it's super like you dropped. Tim. Uh-oh. Is he gone?
It's doing. Can you hear me?
Ah, demon robot. It's a bit delayed, I believe. Hold on, did it catch up to itself?
Maybe. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this really quick.
I'm wondering if anything's updating.
I think the headphones aren't helping though.
The headphones. Do you know if anything's updating on your computer?
All right, how about now?
Yeah, I think it's up to speed again. I think the connection caught up to itself.
All right, beautiful. All right, so basically what I was saying with this is the reason I don't like having the box as the base of the hand, I'll actually zoom in here, is because then this also gives the impression that your finger line is like starts on a straight line, when typically I was taught that the hand is actually more of like a curve, with the middle finger being at the highest and then it kind of curves down. Something like this. Now you can still have the base of the fingers here, but you can see how it's more on a curve so that if they go straight out, the natural position of the hand is actually slightly more of a curve than them just going straight up. Then for your thumb, rather than having it just be like on the box here, it's easier just to keep the impression, oops, a little too far. Keep it on a pentagon and then having it come out on the tip here. Like that, and then this would go back to the rest of the arm here, and this is where the wrist bones would be. So when drawing the hand, try to keep it on a curve on the top, and I think that might start to help. Like, here's a good example. If this is the base of the hand, you can see the shape that I just created down here, up here. You can see how the middle finger is on the top of this curve and how the fingers do not just go straight up from the base. In a more relaxed hand position, it is more on a curve.
Kathy Brown says, I sometimes draw hand gesture sketches using the timer on quick poses, but I can't seem to improve. And when I try to sketch my own hand, I have trouble figuring out how things fit together. What method do you think is best for improving hand depictions?
Making it feel loose and not stiff. I think and I get caught in this all the time too, when my hands look very stiff, it just feels uncomfortable, like as if the character is like purposely putting their hand in like this awkward, stiff position. So you want to like, I'm even like shaking out my hand now and just have it feel more loose and more relaxed. And if you draw a hand more stiff, it gives the impression that the character is doing that on purpose. So let me read the first part. Oh yeah, and really focus on the minor little nuances on a hand. So like when I'm drawing this, the things that typically might get overlooked, like really make sure that you add them. So on most hands, this wrinkle is actually split into two wrinkles. There's usually a bottom wrinkle and then a top one. And the top wrinkle usually is one wrinkle, typically. It might even be like one that is slightly separated. Might not even like be a one perfect line, but usually this one here is split into two. And having just even a small detail like this really enhances the realism on your hand, and it makes it look like you're really focusing on how a hand actually looks. Now, even looking at my own hand, you definitely see some like break off wrinkles, like there might be one slightly above or below. So just be aware that it shouldn't just be like one straight line for each wrinkle. I think that's like the worst thing you can do if you're trying to have a more realistic study of a hand. Really like zoom in, and not too close, but when you're drawing, I guess, when you're analyzing a reference photo, really look at all the finer details and see if you're capturing those in your own work. And if you're not, that's where you can start to improve. So like even here, I'm noticing in the reference photo, this wrinkle here is actually a bit higher, somewhere about here. So I want to make sure I'm trying to capture that to the best of my ability in my drawing here. And then this wrinkle is actually more on a slope like this. So all of those little things add up. And the more of these details that you add, it just gives a more lifeful impression of the hand that you created in the end.
Super Duper says, I know this question is a wrist, but do you know how an animator would draw hands? Also, do you know a way to practice how to draw a character consistent as an animator? It is very important.
So with animation, even though it looks like they're using like simple forms all the time, it may not be like this simple, but something along those lines, where actually if you ask them to do like a realism hand, like a more proportionate, accurate hand, they'd probably be really good at it. When it comes to animation, usually those artists simplify their knowledge of how to draw a hand realistically into a more simplified form, so that when you see those cartoons or animations, it looks like they're really simple to draw. But in actuality, they have such an understanding of how hands work that they can draw them in different proportions and having them toward the camera with foreshortening and have all these weird hand poses. So when thinking like an animator in drawing hands, think in very simple shape language. And the more that you do that, usually the hands will respond to it. I think if you try to have too complicated of hands in animation, it becomes more tedious, more like workflow. When you're doing something that is supposed to be more cartoony, I would try to keep it simple and have that be your goal, but still have it feel accurate. I think that would be the challenge of working with like more of an animation style. That's here. I think I'm going to draw the nail on this pinky here because I think nails are also something that seem to be hard to draw for a lot of artists. So first, and I'm going to kind of ignore this giant thumb here that's kind of blocking our vision. So ignore that for the moment, and let's focus on this pinky. Now, when drawing a hand, the thing I see with pinkies a lot, or with fingernails a lot, is usually they draw like a harsh nail and it goes all the way to the tip. And when you do that for the entire character, sometimes it can look a little off. So my tip for you guys to try to make them just appear more simple is focus more on, I believe this is like the tip of the cuticle part. So like right on the edge, and have that be more of the heavy focus. Then as it goes higher, keep it more simple. And depending on if you want nails that are longer or shorter, if you're doing more of like a typical guy hand, usually the nails aren't longer than the tip of the actual skin part of the finger itself here. So try to keep the nail in, but if you make this too heavy, I think that's where it can look kind of strange. It almost looks like you painted a black line on the tip of the nail. It's like a opposite French manicure. Or if you put a line here, that can make it look like a nail as well. But usually on nails, it has sort of like this half circle, not even like a half circle, just kind of it's like a half oval almost, but it only appears on this half. And usually there's like a cuticle line that you can just indicate on the inside. I try not to make them too dark. Keeping them more light, I think, doesn't draw attention to it because I don't really want that much attention on the nail. Because if you put a lot of detail, especially with like a grayscale drawing like this, it might appear as if there is polish or something that you may not want on the nail itself. So I'm going to keep it more simple. And the area around it, depending on which hand reference you're looking at, typically the area around the nail, underneath of it mostly, typically has more of like a red hue, more of like a fleshy colored hue. So to depict that in a drawing like this, I'm going to add more value shadow, or shading, I should say, to it. It just gives more of the impression of this contrast between the nail and the skin. And I think more importantly is having, actually just with the hand in general, having everything flow together and having it feel like it's one big functioning machine. And with this hand, I'd have to be careful of where I place the knuckle line, because if I place it too high, that makes this appear too long. Or if I place it too low, that'll also throw off the viewer and being like something looks off. So using my reference, I can tell that there's a slight bend here, but it's really not that emphasized. It's like very, very subtle. So I'm gonna like just hint at it without fully just drawing a heavy line, a heavy like singular line. And then as it comes up here, there's more of like a shadow area. And that's because the finger is being pressed against the second finger, and it's creating more of this shadow here. Something like that. And when I zoom out, you can see how that looks. And the first thing I notice is there's too much skin showing. So don't be afraid with your piece to just like redraw over it. I'm going to do that. Have it be just a touch smaller. Something like that. Now, underneath of the hand, I'm going to draw in these wrinkles that I noticed when I was zooming in on the finger, and I want to make sure that I don't forget them on the palm. And when working with hands, don't over render. I think it becomes very easy to like see every crease and wrinkle and think that you have to darken it to really emphasize the form. But having it be more subtle and just like barely hinted at, I think actually creates a stronger impression than if you try to like outline and make the wrinkles feel very heavy.
We have two questions about the difference between masculine hands and feminine hands.
All right. Oh, is that just the question?
Well, yeah, I'm guessing they just want to see how you go about doing the two.
Typically, when I draw hands, I try not to have them be gender specific in any way. I think the way that you can get away with a hand feeling more feminine is just putting a manicured nail on it, or having the features in general just be more soft. And then with masculine hands, having them feel more rugged, a bit more beats, probably thicker, maybe even include like a callus or something. Those would probably be like the stereotypical ways of making a hand feel more masculine or feminine. But usually I don't really see hands as being more masculine or feminine. I just see them as hands. But when you draw the top of them, I definitely think a really good giveaway to making it feel more masculine is like drawing hair on this part of it's like in between the first and second knuckle, and having that kind of bleed into the side of the palm here, or the top of the hand, I should say. Have that carry down into the arm. Just have it appear more hairy. That usually will give a more masculine impression. Or even just having it be as simple as feminine hands could be softer and smaller. Masculine hands are bigger and thicker. But usually, like everything else is the same. The placement of the knuckles, the wrinkles, everything else is pretty much the same.
Right, Philip says, I struggle most in figuring out what pose would be the hand where there is nothing specifically going on with it, or really when they're just relaxed and the focus of the picture is not linked to what the hand is doing. Any tips?
Usually the most relaxed hand is something like, it's actually not even that. It's like these two fingers here are slightly bent in as well. That's usually the typically more relaxed pose. Maybe even the thumb would be a touch more in. But I guess my question to you is, why not have the hand enhance the pose even more? Like if they are trying to give more of like a I don't care attitude, well, then have the hands represent that and be like overly relaxed, or the way that you place them on either the body or the environment around them, have it interactive. And I think just having very basic hands lends itself more toward it being concept art, where it becomes to look more like a T-pose if you try to have like no emotion or expression in the hands. And maybe that's what you're going for, but I would always try to give the hands more life. Like I would try to spend more time trying to figure out how to make the hands help the piece rather than them just be just nothing. You know, they don't enhance or add any value to the overall piece.
I suggest checking out a website called Humans of New York, where there's I think it's a bunch of photographers. They go around New York City and they take pictures of just people, and then they give them their backstory. But they have a ton of just people standing around getting their picture taken, and their poses are just kind of neutral, or they're like smiling, or they're just doing their thing. But they have that's a really good resource for just seeing people just be people, and where really like sometimes you get like the eccentric people, but then most of the time it's just like average people that tell their story of why, like how they got to New York or stuff like that. But what I have done is I've looked at a lot of their hands for that relaxed pose that you're talking about, Ari. I suggest checking it out when you get the chance. It's Humans of New York. Tigil asks, have you ever asked someone to be your hand model?
The first pack I did with CG Cookie as like a resource, I asked my roommate at the time, Dan, to pose his hand. And it was weird taking photos of another hand, because then you notice like the differences between someone else's hand and your own. And you kind of always assume that most people have like a similar hand as you do. But then I really looked at like he had really tiny fingernails, and almost to the point where it made me cringe, because I think he's one of those people that get grossed out by seeing that white line on a nail. Just the idea of something, any kind of dirt could get under it. So he would always clip them. And it got to the point where they're like half the size my nails are. And I remember that for some reason really sticking with me. And all hands are different. And it was kind of neat seeing a different impression of hands. But no, typically when I draw hands, I would say they usually look like my own hands. But I always enjoy seeing the subtle differences in other people's hands.
I noticed freckles on people's hands.
Oh, yeah.
Toby Fox asks, can you show us how to draw a hand in an intense pose with the fingers bent and tense?
Yeah, I think that'll be, I'm going to probably just spend like 5 more minutes on this one, and I'll do a more foreshortened one. I'll do like I'll take a quick reference photo with my iPhoto here. And I'll have it toward the camera. It'll be an intense, and then I wanted the knuckle bent for the whoever asked to see the knuckle exaggeration question. All right, so right here, this is a good example of where the bone is really kind of changing directions. So we have this bone here is like here, and then the one under it is attached. But since it's doing such a kind of dramatic shift in direction, we're going to get the shadow, but it's not going to just be like a line down. There's going to be a slight curve to it because it's bending the skin on top of it. So when I'm doing this, I really want to emphasize this change in direction, but at the same time, make it feel natural and has a curve to it. So I'm going to do that here. And that you see that a lot with skin. Like even here's a good example of there's a contrast in, it's like the slope goes down and then it goes back up. And on the up, it's going to be more in shadow, but the place down, this area, is going to be more in light. So I think the reason I enjoy drawing hands so much is because I have kind of an asphyxiation with contrast. I think hands are like the perfect example of how to add subtle contrast everywhere, and it really helps create the form of the hand. I'll do it here too. So like using your eraser tool, you can help create form. I'm going to emphasize the shadow here. I'll use my eraser tool to really enhance that contrast.
We got a couple of questions about the contest. Stella asks, when are you going to say the winners to the contest? Are you going to make a stream to talk about some of our designs?
Next week. So that will be, we will announce the winners on next week's live stream before we even color any of the hands here.
That was another question, actually. Someone asked if you were going to just do these all in black and white, or if you're going to end up coloring them.
Oh yeah, so next week will be the coloring process. All right, let's move on to the other hand here. Because I could keep rendering this hand for forever. Erase these. All right, I'm going to use my photo booth really quick. I'm going to create a quick hand pose. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to turn on these lights to get better shadows. Okay, I'm doing the weirdest hand that I can possibly think of at the moment.
There was also a question in regards to like magic casting hands, like when people cast spells.
Okay, yeah. All right, let me bring in this reference photo here. Ignore myself. I'm going to crop everything else that we don't need. And I think you guys should just become familiar with feeling comfortable with the hand. So regardless of whatever pose it is, it's always going to be the same way of going about doing it, whether it's a very exaggerated extreme hand or if it's a relaxed hand. Try not to think of them as separate things. They're the same anatomy, same proportions. It's just the way that we're drawing it, or the pose itself is different. It's like when I look at this, I still see the rectangle. It's facing us. So this does become a bit more of a challenge. But when I'm looking at this, I'm still going to go about it in the same way. I'm going to look at creating more of a fluid form first. Look at the larger shapes. Try to capture them. And then go on with drawing them. So don't feel like you have to hit, like, just go like super slow and make it feel, you know, perfectly accurate. If anything, sometimes you can like draw. Imagine if these are like where the fingers are coming out, and try to represent that in your drawing. I feel like everyone goes about drawing hands differently, and then like you might then draw like the cylinder that the fingers are represented as, which if that's the way that works for you, that's awesome. I generally like to take more of a look at the overall shape, and then I can see them being rounded out like this. And then the one that's toward us, it's like this. And this one, oops, kind of goes up and then goes more down to about here-ish. And our pinky actually starts below, you know what, this one even comes out further. Here first, and then kind of covers where that pinky starts. About here. And if this looks kind of crazy, it'll make sense once I start edging it out. But I think worrying too soon about how it looks is going to hurt you. Keep it more fluid and have it flow more on exaggeration. So like right now I can tell, okay, my arm then should be something more like this, because I'm looking at how the pinky interacts with the arm. And then this one, the arm is way too low. So I know that I need to adjust some of the proportions here. So I'm always trying to make relations between the image itself. And I'll look for shapes that kind of stand out, and I'll have those try to match up with the shapes around them. And the thumb is crazy. Extended over here. I actually have to move over the sketch. Maybe I'll make it bigger so you guys can see what I'm doing too. I'll hide all this other stuff.
We just got a pretty good question.
Let's hear it.
And Matt asks, do you enjoy being able to breathe?
To breathe? Yeah, most days, yes.
I mean, if I had the ability to not breathe and live, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
You could just like go underwater and never have to worry about drowning. Just walking around, bottom of the ocean. The skirmisher says, just discovered your live streams yesterday, and I think they are awesome. They really got me inspired to try and develop my drawing skills. I'd also be interested in knowing what you do with hands that are just hanging down without making them look boring. I think we already covered that one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say thanks for joining the stream. And if nobody knows about this, you guys can go on YouTube afterwards and you can watch all of the live streams that we've done in the past, I think it's like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while. Okay, like right here, here's a good example of, I noticed that the initial sketch I did wasn't far out enough, so I can just adjust it right now. And I think if I was so obsessed with having it look right on the first pass, it would actually slow me down quite a bit. And I'd be so paranoid of having everything be proportional on just the initial sketch that I wouldn't actually be able to work as fast. So here, I'm gonna bring down that pinky. And when I draw the edge of the finger, you can see how it does have definitely like clear, defined, jointed points, but they're still rounded. It's still not like edged out. I think the hands that I always see that I guess confuse me are the ones that are like pointed, or if like the fingers are pointed, or when the base of the knuckle is so much thicker than the tip of the finger. Typically fingers, like if you look at your own, I know that there might be some size variation with the knuckle, but for the most part, you're gonna have a finger that is generally the same width near the top as in the bottom. And then as it webs out, that's where you start to see it become bigger, because every hand has a web. So that finger actually doesn't stop like at the webbing. It keeps going past. It's just the webbing kind of throws people off. So I think that was the other thing that I noticed most is some artists don't include webbing with their hands. Now, usually, depending on the person, I guess, some webbing is more exaggerated than others. Every person has it even subtly. So not including it at all can make your hand feel very strange.
Tijo says, would you mind giving Jensen a shout out? He couldn't make it to the stream and asked me to request a shout out.
For who?
Jensen.
Shout out for Jensen.
Our friend from the UK. Ready? This is a shout out. Jensen!
Stella.
Stella's also here.
Oh, wait, really quick. Yeah. Actually, where's that hand drawing? Okay, so on the base of the hand, I'll use this one as an example. The palm side of the hand, there's usually a thicker part right under the fingers, and it's like the underside of the knuckle. So when I see the reference photo that we have over here, you can see how they jut out slightly. And this shadow that is right under it is crucial for me to include in the drawing we have here, because that gives the indication of that form, and without it, it would feel very strange. So I want to include as many of those subtleties like this as I can, and that will help the foreshortening feel more real. Because without it, foreshortening can look very strange very fast. And even as I'm going to go through and do some cleanup work, I'm going to notice, oh, okay, I need to add more of a contrast here, or I really didn't add enough value to this knuckle, and it's making it look strange. So I'm very aware of where I need to include more details.
Mike P asks, will you add more videos to your material tutorial? I remember you mentioning you wanted to show a bunch of materials like gummy bears, wood, and etc.
Yeah, that got rescheduled because now I'm doing, I think I can mention it. I'm doing a character course, and it's on a specific subject matter. And that one took priority just so that if you guys have seen the asset flow that we have on CG Cookie, we decided we're going to do another one of them, and it's going to be a character. So that kind of hit my top priority right now. So for the month of February, that's what I'll be recording. And I think next month, I'm going to be doing the traditional course. So after that one, I'll get back into the fundamental flows. And basically, that means I'm going to be doing a definitely more extensive look at material studies, because that is something I really enjoy doing. I just got to make sure that the way it's being taught feels right. I think I had some hiccups with the way that I went about doing materials in the first place. So I want to make sure I kind of even all of those up before I go back into it.
Jamil asks, did you know Stanley said his favorite superpower would be luck? Because if you have luck, you have everything. I agree. Does that change your preferred superpower?
I guess I haven't given too much time to think about my preferred superpower. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to think what superpower I would even want. I would probably go more basic and just do something like telekinesis or just psychic powers in general. So like the ability to levitate and all that. I think that would be kind of fun. Because I think before, the ability I really wanted was I would be able to always decipher when someone's telling the truth or not. But then I realized on how miserable that could make me.
And then you watched Horns.
What?
And then you watch Horns.
Yeah. If you guys have seen or heard about the Daniel Radcliffe movie Horns, well, that was one of the things he was gifted with. There's also a few other, but one of them was well, that one's a little different because everyone is violently honest with him. Like they'll tell him what they just really don't like about him. But in my case, like if you would say I love you to someone, and when they say it back, if you were able to decipher that they're not telling the truth, be like, oh, this is heartbreaking.
I mean, no, I wouldn't want luck. Because it would probably get really boring really fast. You're just like, oh yeah, watch this, and just like nail a shot from like way impossible odds. You just keep doing it over and over again. It'd be really nice, but it doesn't change my preferred superpower. I'd still want shapeshifting. Shapeshifting would be awesome.
Mystique.
Be like, I'm a giant gorilla now. Raw.
All right, so in our reference here, we can see this massive wrinkle that's being stretched, like the skin is stretching. So I want to make sure I include that. And rather than just doing like two sharp lines, I'm going to just try to edge it out with a shadow. When drawing hands, I think one of the easiest way to draw them is don't see them as hands. Just picture them as these weird, like floppy appendages. And I think when we think too much of hands, they become very stiff looking. But if you see them more as like forms, then it becomes more easy. Like this form is like more spherical. And I know you know how to draw a sphere and how to shade a sphere. So why don't I just think of that when I'm drawing this hand rather than think of it as a finger? And I know it sounds weird, but sometimes it helps not drawing a hand with the mindset that this is a hand that I'm drawing and it has to look like a hand. Because if you just try to keep it down to the shape language that they are, then it just becomes a lot easier. And to be honest, I have more fun drawing hands when I'm focusing more on the shapes that I'm able to see and like really trying to edge out the different wrinkles that the hands create. In the end, you should have a more fluid looking hand. Actually, I noticed how thick I made this thumb, so I'm going to thin it out and make it thinner. Always be conscious of the overall shape relation to each other. I think this is where maybe a lot of you that we're talking about it being too big or too small can relate. So here, I saw that it came out too far, and looking at the reference, you can see how the shape, the width, is actually pretty similar all the way down. And I'm not like trying to exaggerate it to the point where it become like almost frog-like, especially if I had like a line underneath. I'm trying to create more of a human hand. So to do that, I want to make sure that it feels accurate. And I think just knowing that typically fingers are roughly the same size from near the top to the base, I think helps out a lot. And this is one thing that I think will help me when I'm drawing this thumb here.
Andrew McKinney asks, any advice on drawing rendering unusual fantasy hands like Yoda's?
Like who?
Yoda.
Oh, Yoda. Hold on. I have to look at Yoda's hands. I thought he had claws.
He does. He's got like little claw hands.
If I can find a Yoda hand. Ooh, okay. Yeah, these are cute. Okay, so let me pull in this photo of Yoda really quick. These are from the prequels. I am sorry. All right. So in this hand here, you can see how we can treat it the same way that we're doing the human hand. It's just a bunch of shapes and forms that have really the same properties. It's just seeing them as that. So I am going, if I had to draw Yoda's hand or any creature hand that looks like this, I would treat it as if it was the same thing as a human hand. It is just a bunch of soft cylinders and a bunch of wrinkles that need to be placed that feels accurate. So don't feel intimidated by it being like, oh, this is a creature, this is a mythological fantasy hand, like I can't have reference. Just treat them the same way as human, but then have the differences of them. Like in Yoda's case, they're thicker, there's 2 fingers missing, and they're more claw-like at the fingertip. But if you really look at the way that they even wrinkled it, Yoda has the 2 knuckles up here, and I'm sure if I looked on the other side, it'd have that thicker knuckle on the top. And then on this side, it has the wrinkle for each of those digits. So try not to get intimidated by it being fantastical. Just know that you can draw it. A lot of it is just like a mental thing, and you like prevent yourself from drawing because you think you can't, but I guarantee you can't. Actually, I heard a great quote earlier this week on a TV show I was watching, and this trainer was yelling at someone, and they were saying, talk yourself into it, not out. And I really like that quote because I hear a lot of artists just talk about why they can't do something or why it's too challenging. But I like the idea of what if you tried talking yourself into it, being like, no, I can do this. Like, I feel like I have enough experience to understand how to do this part of the piece. I might not know how to do the entirety of the piece, but I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to start it regardless. I think having that attitude and that mentality is so much better for an artist to have than one that is like constantly making excuses or living out of fear. I feel like I talk about that a lot on these live streams, and you really got to break out of your shell when it comes to art and being afraid of drawing stuff that is new or foreign to you or trying to take risks. And that's something that I think is always important as an artist to try to do.
Torn Vincent says, I told a friend I was watching a CG cookie live stream and they asked, what do cookies have to do with anything?
This is kind of a fun question. So when my boss started this website, he started like 4 that weren't working at first, and each of them had like these strange names, and he tried to make them have some kind of a meaning behind it. So the idea of CG Cookie was he wanted to play off of like puns. So for advertising purposes, he would be like freshly baked tutorials, and our mascot is a baker. He's actually this guy right there. We all got golden bakers at our last CG Cookie retreat, and it was kind of he kind of jokes about it now how we just kind of ran with it, and we never really gave it a second thought. So when I hear CG Cookie, I guess I've become very numb to how weird it might sound to new people. For me, it's just it's CG Cookie. But I'm sure someone would be like, "What? Like, are you guys a bakery? Can we order cookies? Do you cater?" So yeah, that's kind of how the name stuck.
Jamil says, Joe, March 27th is National Joe Day. Unfortunately, it's also Easter. Do you feel that Easter is moving in on your day? Yes, I do. I'm actually very upset by this, and I'm going to have to talk to the big guys upstairs about moving that date back into April. Because National Joe Day is my day. It's actually named after me. Clarissa says, how would you draw a hand in a pocket without giving that hidden look?
You don't. I think a lot of the times it doesn't need to be in the pocket, but maybe the character calls for it. Like maybe if you do put it in the pocket, it'll enhance the overall impression of the character. Now, I beg you though not to let that be a reasoning for it, because I think as artists we can be creative enough where we can put it outside of the pocket and have it have purpose. And you should want to draw the hand. I really don't want to encourage hands being drawn in a pocket.
The other thing you can do for that, besides don't put them in pockets, is I think a lot of the other thing that Tim's been reinforcing is take your own reference. That's huge. Like if you're trying to draw a hand, like because like when you think about it and you're like, oh well, this character puts his hand in his pockets. Well, maybe he's trying to show that he's cold, or that he's just kind of like, or he or she is like hunched over and just kind of like a, here, let me turn on my camera and I'll show you guys where it's just like, or they're just like this. Like you can still see a lot of the hand in that. It doesn't necessarily need to be like this, because most people don't walk around like this everywhere. They keep their hand slightly out of their pocket. So that's what I would suggest doing, is practicing the hand somewhat out of the pocket. But take your own references. That's what's really important.
All right, really quick. I'm kind of in the cleanup stage now where I can go through and clean up a lot of the edge work that I have. You can see like this finger definitely needs a lot of help, but I have a pretty solid foundation that I can build upon now. So now I feel pretty confident that the forms are somewhat in the right place. It just now is me going through and detailing. And for me, this is really fun. So I actually love this stage here. So I'm going to do a bit of this and try to answer a few questions.
Cisco Punch 67 says gorillas don't have pockets.
That is also true.
I'm sure I can find a picture of a gorilla wearing pants on the internet. I can do it. Google knows all. IamNet says, can you show us how to draw hands in pockets?
Yes. Okay. So this is a pocket. This is the hand that is in the pocket. Ta-da! And there might be like a bump to indicate that the hand's down there.
This is actually a serious question. Tijula says, I find it hard to wrap a hand around something, like when it's holding something. My hand seems to go straight through the object instead of wrapping around it.
Okay, let me think if I have any reference on hand. This is another great example of definitely use reference. And if you're going to do a weapon, try to hold it naturally. Sometimes when I see characters that are holding weapons, it feels like forced or stiff. So if you're grabbing a weapon, don't like overthink of how it's going to look. Have it feel more natural, as if you are about to swing. If it's like a sword, like, you know, put it in a position that you would actually hold it when you're swinging, and then you can do your pose and get a reference photo off of that. And I'm trying to think if I can do this really quick. Maybe I'll do it on the side here. All right, if there is a pull, actually I'll just do a straight pull. All right, if they're holding onto this, and maybe their thumb is like up here. All right, I definitely would want to use reference, but I can imagine that the fingers have to be wrapping around the pole here. So I got to give them enough space in between the pole and the top of the skin here, or in this case, it would probably be more like the knuckle, for it to make sense. Then it would go around. So definitely being able to see through this object is an important thing to do. And you want to make sure that it feels justified on the spacing you have in between the hands and the fingers. So even this, I can already tell that I made this too far down. The pinky would actually go to about here. And the other thing is, don't feel afraid to kind of smush the hand and the skin in areas. We are not like mechanical objects. So our skin does form or conform to, sometimes it almost looks like strange proportions, but when you're gripping something, your skin will flatten out a bit. So it's not like I need to make sure I have a perfect circle for the knuckle to be in on each of them. If anything, this pinky would probably get smushed to about here as it wraps around, and it wouldn't be as perfect looking. And even the way that I did the knuckle, it wouldn't be like this all the way down either, for the most part. There might be a case where it is, but when I'm doing this knuckle, it'd probably be like this. I would angle it more. Something that it feels less constructed and feels more organic. And I think using your own reference and really trying to study on looking through your hand and seeing how the object is being held is important to do.
Super Duper asks, I have this weird thing where I can draw from reference. My drawings look cartoony, not like Looney Tune cartoony, but Samurai Jack cartoony. I figured it's because I drew it as an animator would, with simple shapes. Is that a bad thing per se?
Absolutely. No, of course not. That's a really good thing. It means you're able to take your reference and apply it to your own style. If anything, that's how I would recommend using reference. So what you're doing is actually what a lot of people struggle to do. So that's a good thing. Unless if you're trying to do a realism study and it came out like Samurai Jack, then you might want to analyze maybe what is, or like what what part of the process is becoming more cartoony. But if you're using it more as just like a reference point to create your own characters from, and you have like this unique style that you can use, then yeah, that's awesome.
Stella says, hey, I heard my name.
Stella. You heard me calling all the way from Wisconsin.
Bring, hello.
Stella.
Going through all the questions.
So now here's a good point where this nail that I drew looks bad. It does not reflect the reference image enough. It's too long, and it needs to be pushed down a bit further. So I'm going to take my eraser tool and erase it and draw right over. It took me a while to become comfortable with the idea of starting over, or like erasing a part of the piece that you've already completed to draw over. And once you kind of get over that impression, it just becomes a lot easier to rework areas of your piece. And I want to make sure I have enough of a gap so you can still see the skin on that side. Something like that. Draw the cuticle. And if I try to draw this hand foreshortened without using reference, I can promise you it wouldn't look similar to this. It'd probably be a lot more wonky. And that's why I love using reference, and using yourself as a free reference is one of the best things we can do as artists. If you need something quick, but you need something specific, like in this case, we really needed a specific hand that was foreshortened with an extreme pose and some knuckle action going on. So I wanted to make sure when I took a reference photo myself, rather than digging through Google Images for far too long, most likely, you just have that reference right there.
Fabian Dornbos says, do you have any advice on drawing expressive hands? I mean, hands in which you can see the person's personality.
I would think this would be one. Like if I drew in the rest of the character here and be like, ooh, I'm casting a spell on you. I think this hand definitely reflects the personality of the character. And the gesture that they're doing can definitely reflect the character. So even something like with the hands in the pocket, as much as I don't recommend doing that, it definitely gives off the impression of bored or I don't care or aloof. And if that's the impression you want to go with, that's fine. I would try to find something maybe a little more complicated than just putting them in the pocket. But let's say you wanted like an aristocrat character in a fantasy game, and you wanted them to be like, what are those characters called that play the instrument? A bard, I think.
Wait, what was the question?
Hold on, let me Google this.
Wait, what was the question though? I could just probably answer it for you.
Oh no, I got it. Okay, it is a bard.
Okay.
So the characters that are musical in fantasy games.
Oh yeah.
And usually they're more expressive with their hands. They're typically holding an instrument, but the way that they're holding the instrument is usually looking as if they're about to play it. So you want to make sure that the way that they're holding it feels natural and accurate. So I definitely think, yeah, you can draw hands that reflect the character's personality.
Do you have any advice for drawing the hands that way?
Yeah, I guess on one of my characters is named Tracy, and she's definitely more eccentric, we'll say. She's a real go-getter. And when I do her pose, I'm going to have them be more sensual. I'm going to have them placed, and the way that they're arched, it's definitely going to be with purpose. And she's doing that for a reason. So when I draw her hands, in any frame that I ever draw her, she is always conscious of the way that she is laying her hands, or how she's placing her hands on other people, or beckoning them. So I'm going to be always aware of the hand language that I keep with her, and definitely like the way that they're drawn. So in like something like her case, I would definitely have nails that are manicured, and they'd be longer, and I would want to be aware of that.
I am not asks, hey Tim, do you have a dent on the roof of your car?
I used to, yeah. Why?
How did you get said dent on the roof of your car?
On the last car I had, me and one of my friends decided to go to a parking lot, and out of the blue, a song started playing on the radio. So we got out and we started dancing on the top of a car in a parking lot. And midway through, the top of the car bent. And I'm assuming you're asking because you saw a YouTube video that was from way long ago, and that's when it happened.
Yeah. Tigil has informed me that they found the video, and they're discussing that in the Skype chat right now.
What you actually don't see is my windshield cracked. Like
what?
The whole bottom half of it cracked. And I remember I had to pay for a new windshield, but the funniest thing, I think one of the funniest moments I've ever had with my parents is me explaining how the windshield cracked.
Oh,
and
man.
I tell them, oh yeah, me and Kat, we we're dancing on top of the car. And it was just like that look of, they weren't even surprised. Like I'm at the point where my parents are like, well, he does art, whatever.
Speaking of windshields cracking, back in high school, we used to like make our own little short movies. And one of them, we needed someone to get hit by a car. So we stuffed a man, like a bunch of clothes with like just random stuff, like other clothes. And in the scene, someone had to get hit by a car. So we threw this dummy made of clothes at this car and hit it, like going like 30 miles an hour. And it ended up cracking our friend's windshield like straight down the middle. It was like the worst thing ever. I didn't realize that you could crack like a windshield so bad just by just the slightest button. But I guess, hey, if you're going 30 miles an hour and you hit a button, it's going to crack your windshield.
Yeah.
Cisco Punch 67 says, this tutorial is gripping.
Hands down, that was my favorite pun yet.
Tigil says, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Like fingernail.
There you go. All right. I was like trying to concentrate on drawing and figuring out that pun. Okay, actually, here's a good example of where something looks off. So I can see on this hand here, something looks a bit off. The one thing that, I guess a few things come to mind right away, is this curve that I lay down here is probably too extreme and should be lower. And then this finger itself should probably be a tad higher. So try to be consciously critical of your own work and how you're placing things, because that's when you start to see what looks wrong or what looks slightly off. And the more that you do that, the more that those little things won't happen as much, because you've corrected the same problem in the past. You already know how to overcome something like that. So in this case, I know that that looks wrong. I'm going to go ahead and fix it.
Fate asks, this question may have been asked before, but I'm currently applying to colleges, and I was wondering what school you went to and what your major was. They don't exactly have a major specific for concept art. What's the best major to be in?
For me personally, I went to the Art Institute in Illinois, Schaumburg, and at the time, they didn't have a concept art degree, so I was in game art. But it was funny, after I graduated, they started up an illustration degree, and that was supposed to be geared more towards doing concept art stuff. But I really do believe that you do not need higher education in art to get a job in the industry. It really just comes to you, your quality, your skill level, and your passion, and that will get you a job more so than a paper saying that you graduated from a school will. But I think there are a lot of things that AI gave to me that I wouldn't have gotten if I just was on my own. It definitely gave me a community, a sense of competitiveness that I could apply my own work against someone else's too. I think that really helped me personally grow as an artist. And sometimes when you're surrounded by people that have like-minded dreams and passions, I think that can definitely rub off on you, and it makes you more inspired to work. So I think that's what I think I gained most from AI. But in terms of what I learned, a lot of it was self-taught. And I really do thank DeviantArt and YouTube for helping me through. And actually, a lot of the friends that I met just, telling me in passing something about like, here's what the multiply layer does. Oh, you don't know what masking is? Let me show you what that is. And just, I feel like I gained such crucial knowledge over time without even knowing how crucial it was for me, just from my friends. And they would learn something new and then they would show me because they were excited. And then when I learned something new, I think it was the liquefy filter, I got really excited and I showed, or no, it wasn't liquefy. I don't think that was out at the time. It was some kind of a filter. I think it was overlay. I think I was really excited about overlay at the time. And I showed my friends how I used it to enhance the colors in my piece. And we just did that. We shared it. And I think having that is really important. So if you can go out and not only try to teach yourself technical skills, I think having a sense of community really helps as well. And especially as artists, when a lot of us are so introverted and we don't get out as much, and it's kind of harder for us to make friends. I think it helps having that community that you can get advice from, or you can get critique from, and that you can feel comfortable asking for help when you need it. But at the same time, you also have to be willing to help them when they need it. So it's definitely a back and forth, and you gotta, hopefully you can find people that can offer that for you. So no, I don't think there is a best major out there. Oh man, I want to color this hand so bad.
We're at 3:27 right now, so I don't know if you want to keep how long you want to keep going for, or if you want to do your questions.
Give me like 7 more minutes on the hand.
Okay.
I'll try cleaning it up a bit.
Cisco Punch 67 says Sycra and another YouTuber have a good technique called the coil technique to create fast cylinders in perspective. And I believe that's what you did with this hand too, right?
Yeah, actually, I honestly don't know when I started doing that, but I started doing that in high school. It just was really easy for me to like lay out how to draw the finger in coils. So yeah, I actually had no idea Sycra did that. So if that is something that maybe will help you guys draw fingers and seeing them in different perspectives, yeah, I would definitely give that a try. It's definitely helped me out. I'm gonna start adding these little subtle wrinkles here.
I'm going through questions, sorry.
So
The skirmisher asks, what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
For a long time, I actually did defend the Phantom Menace just because I saw that when I think I was 11 years old, and I really liked it at the time. And I still think Darth Maul is the best villain out of the entire cast, like in terms of just design, and his presence was always very intimidating. So,
Did you say Vader or Maul?
Maul.
Okay.
I do like Vader though, but in terms of an actual movie, now that I rewatched the Phantom Menace, I was like, okay, I can kind of understand why. There's a lot of problems with it, but I would say The Empire Strikes Back would be my favorite one.
Oh, that's tough because I really enjoyed the new one, like a lot. But yeah, there's something about Empire. I think it's just the whole idea of like good guys lose. You know, like all like a bunch of bad stuff goes down at the end of that movie, and you're just like, oh man, this is rough. Because I mean, I think it's 6 where like you're like, yay, good guys win, yay. But I also kind of felt that in the new one where it was like, it wasn't like good guys win. It was just kind of like, well, that happened. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, no, I wasn't terribly fond of the new one.
Don't get me wrong, I really do love Star Wars, but yeah, I think 5's probably the top. But man, did I watch 1 way too many times.
Actually, I think that would be the other one that would be a close tie for me. I really like well, it didn't have a name at the time from what you've told me, but A New Hope. I really do like that one.
Yeah, 4 is good. 4 is very solid. And man, I can't imagine being, in the 70s and just seeing that happen and just like losing your mind and being like, how did they do that? Lasers?
still feel that way with the original Tron. I still don't understand how they did some of that stuff.
They painted it.
That blows my mind that they did that to every frame.
That to me is just like, wow.
Like the amount of like just painstaking, like meticulous precision that went into some of those older movies. I'm just like, you don't see that level of craft anymore. Usually. Or I guess that kind of dedication. Because I think you do see a really heightened craft, but God, the dedication that must have taken to paint every frame, those glowing strips of color.
Oh my God, right?
I give them a lot of credit for whoever had to do that.
That's what I loved about the new one, though. Like the detail that they went into as far as like what the lightsabers looked like, and how they weren't just like the normal just beam of light. Like Kylo Ren's lightsaber was all like crackly and had like plasma and stuff everywhere. I really like that detail that they put into that. Chris Wong apparently has found a picture of a gorilla wearing pants. Thank you, Chris Wong. It exists.
Glad to know I can check that off my list.
Gogo Loomis LPA says, Joe, are you still having problems pronouncing my name? Well, if your name isn't Gogo Loomis LP, then yes. Jensen says, guess you just got in and is loving this stream.
He heard us. He heard the shout out. All right, here's another good example of something looked wrong to me, and it was the top of this nail. And originally I had this line going back. When I really looked at the nail, the line actually is more of a curve forward. So I need to make sure that I represent that in the drawing. And sometimes it's things that you don't see on the first pass or even the second or third pass. It'll be like you're detailing a section being like, whoa, something feels off here. And then you look at your reference like, how did I miss that? But that'll happen. Just don't let it defeat you. Just be like, all right, well, let me go ahead and fix it and move on.
This is a question from earlier. Clarissa asks, since we were talking about superhero or superpowers, who's your favorite superhero?
When I was a kid, it was Spider-Man. But then as I got older, I think I just became more interested just by the X-Men. I think maybe just because there's so many of them that it was kind of interesting seeing what the new powers were, or like what that mutant did and how they fit into society. And I felt like every mutant kind of had their own story. I think the movies kind of changed my opinion on superhero stuff just because I don't read comic books. So I'm definitely very heavily influenced just from the movie themselves. So I would say in terms of movies, the older Batmans, I think, still register with me as being like the best superhero movies just because they were loud, they were campy, and Batman Returns is still probably my favorite superhero movie of all time. But in terms of just the superhero itself, I really like Spider-Man, but then the Tobey Maguire movies came out. I was like, okay, no, I actually like the first one. I really do. And then the second one, I was like, all right, it wasn't quite as exciting. But the third one, I still think is one of the worst superhero movies. And I think that is the same with X-Men. I really like the first one. The second one I really, really liked because I love Nightcrawler. And then the third one I still see as being like one of the worst, not only superhero movies, just one of the worst movies ever made. And I think that's why sometimes superhero movies can rub me the wrong way, where I'm like, oh, another one. Let me watch the same formula over and over again. But it can still be a fun, good time.
I didn't know that you enjoyed X-Men.
Oh, I do. Yeah, Nightcrawler and Mystique. But I don't like the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique. I like the old one.
Oh, Rebecca Romaine.
Yeah.
So you know that Mystique is Nightcrawler's mom, right?
Well, since I'm the movie version, no. I don't like that idea.
I'm wondering if they're going to show that in the new one, since there's like the whole time travel thing. That's what I don't like about the last one that they made, was that they did time travel. And while it was cool, it was like, what is going on in this movie?
I actually did like that one. Was that Days of Future Past?
Yeah.
I did like that one.
It's a cool concept, but man, time travel.
I'm not a fan of time travel.
Who is my favorite superhero? Man, that's a tough question. I guess favorite superhero is probably Spider-Man. Spider-Man, and then like anti-hero be Venom. I guess I don't see Batman as a superhero
He's
because
just a guy that dresses up.
yeah, he just plans everything.
He's just rich.
He's just a really good planner.
I think the reason Batman is such a good superhero is because he has the best villains in his world.
Yes, he has fantastic villains.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I like his message more than a lot of superheroes, where it's like, oh, you were bitten by a radioactive bug, and now you have superpowers, and wow, that's really, you didn't really have to work for that, did you? Whereas like Batman trained day in and day out, you know, for a long time, and then was like, okay, now I'm gonna go fight crime, and then it gets like really crazy, wherein he starts fighting like superpowered people, and you're like, how are you? Well, he's crazy. He's training even harder.
Crazy. Although I really like the indie ones though. Like I know Scott Pilgrim is probably not considered a superhero, but I really like Scott Pilgrim. I really like Kick-Ass and Watchmen. I really liked, but I guess they're not like the trademark comic book villain or heroes.
Yeah. Oh, I just had a really good question. Oh, who's your favorite Dragon Ball Z character?
Ooh, oh man, it would be a sin if I didn't say Fat Boo. I really love Fat Boo.
Fat Boo is amazing. Boo in general is amazing. I love that character.
Yeah, Kid Boo was fun, but I really love Fat Boo. I love villains that just are ridiculous, and like that's why the Penguin I still think is one of my favorites from Batman. But no, Fat Boo I really liked. I really liked Perfect Cell. I liked his Cell Juniors. Frieza was okay, but in terms of just a character in general, I really liked, what's his name, Tien, the little bald kid.
Oh no, wait, no. Tien is a bald guy with the three eyes. Chao Tzu is the little clown guy.
No, not. Oh shoot, I'm really embarrassed that I don't remember what his name is.
It's like it's a little white guy with like clown makeup, right?
No. Oh, hold on. I'll Google this really quick.
Is he part of the Z Fighters, like the main cast?
Yeah, he's like Goku's. Well, the thing is, I actually watched Dragon Ball. And I really liked. Oh my gosh, what is the best friend's name? The bald one. Krillin. Thank you. Oh my gosh, Krillin. I really liked Krillin back in the day, and I always felt bad for him because like. Especially in Dragon Ball, he had like this attitude about him of just being like jealous of Goku and
dude, Krillin,
everything he did, it just did not compare. But Goku still liked just having him around. I don't know. I really like that story arc.
Krillin was a punk back in the day, and then
When he was a little kid.
Yeah, he was just a little. Oh man, just like want to beat that kid, and then he ends up with Android. I think
18.
18.
Yeah.
17? Yeah. I think it's 18, the blonde one. But yeah, he ends up with her, and then it's just like the adult Krillin is like my favorite Krillin because he just looks like such a dad. Have you seen it?
Oh God, the one with the stash in the hair.
Yeah, no, you're like, how did he get
that?
How did he get hair? Oh yeah.
There's a lot of characters in that story that I actually really do like Hercule, as weird as he was. I liked his whole story with Fat Boo and the little dog that they had. I'm pretty sure the dog's name was B.
Oh yeah, that was really sad.
Yeah, I liked that. Okay, I know we're already over our time. So, oh man, I can't wait till next week when I can color this. I'm already like, I can see the colors that I'm going to use from the reference. Because I think it's good to also try painting with colors that aren't so specific. So like when I guess the first thought that comes to mind when I think skin is like this tan kind of light beigey color and something maybe in between like this. But then when I look at my reference and I see all these purples and pinks that were mainly captured because of the lighting system that I have here, like I love the color palette that I have here, and I can't wait to apply these type of colors into the hand. And I think it'll be a good time for next week. All right, let me see if there's one more question here. Tigil says there's a live stream for the community on Saturday. So if this is something that you guys are interested in, streaming with the people that watch the live streams and follow CG Cookie, that will be on Saturday, and you should ask Tigil for more information. So pretty much just go to community.cgcookie.com and you'll find it. Another reminder, the contest ends tomorrow, so please submit your submissions if you have them. Go vote for your favorites if you want someone specifically to win the community award. And yeah, I think that is the gist of it. I know we got a lot of more fun things coming out for you. Oh, and yesterday we released a t-shirt template that's free to use for commercial and personal use. So if you ever enter a t-shirt design or are curious about maybe doing t-shirts of your own, you can download those on the site right now. And yeah, I think that is like doing a quick pass. Nope, that's all I have on my plate. Joe, any last words?
If you guys worked on the hands with him, feel free to post it on the stream, on the actual stream one that we have on the community, on the page. Post your image up on there, because we always like to sing what people worked on during the stream.
And then next week we will be painting the hand. So I will probably give you guys the outline for this hand that I just did and the one previous, and we will work on coloring some hands. And I can't wait for that. That's actually something I'm really looking forward to. Okay. Thank you guys for coming to this live stream, and hopefully we'll see you next week. All right. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay.
You're not off the air yet. Okay, now you are.